Okay, so context of Merchant of Venice. The first word we're going to focus on will be merchant, because from the ground up. Anyway, so a merchant is different from your traditional shopkeeper in that they are probably rich. They will be getting their goods from another country, which in Shakespeare time obviously was a lot harder than it is today, because you had to get it on a boat and actually sell. So it's more complicated. So obviously they have a lot more money, because oranges are expensive. Even like 100 years ago, people would only have an orange on a special occasion. So if you're getting it from a merchant, the odds are that it's going to be quality and it's going to be expensive. However, we can't actually tell which character is supposed to be the Merchant of Venice if you look at it. Like, it could be any of the male characters could arguably be considered a merchant, because they are selling their goods at an expensive rate, and they are probably being like extravagant and rich as part of it. That's another thing. They're kind of expected to wear fancy clothes, like they have a guild and they're expected to meet with the ruler of the country every so often to pay taxes and stuff. So they are probably going to flaunt their wealth. Anyway, on to the interesting part, Venice. So Venice during Shakespeare's time was really, really special. People at the time thought this, people today think this. It's really cool, because what they had, although there were a bunch of different empires and things going on in Europe at the time, and it was chaos, and like large amounts of Italy were controlled by different empires, and some of them were controlled by Italian empires, some of them were controlled by places like Austria or Spain, who are obviously not Italian. But Venice was a city-state. This isn't the same thing as Londonindependence. It's actual, they have a city, and the suburban areas, they're growing the crops that they can survive by themselves as a country, and it's literally just Venice and a few fields in the area. It's really, really cool. They had one of the most democratic political systems of the time. Like, you weren't allowed to have two members of the same family in a governing body, because obviously that's more likely to cause corruption, and if your entire government is run by one family, they're going to be leaning towards one political view, and it's like, this is one of the major issues with Harry Potter. But so they have the Duke, who has an Italian name, which I think it's the Doge, and you have his government, his advisors, and they have like quite a well functioning what's it called, secret service. If you go to Venice, they have gargoyles on the walls everywhere, right? So with these gargoyles, what would happen is, if you suspected your next door neighbour of being a traitor or like committing any general crime, you could put a tube containing their message down the gargoyle's mouth, which would be hollow, and that would go through a network of pipes until it ended up in the cellar of the Secret Service. And these things can still be seen today, but as far as I'm aware, they're not in use, because obviously that's kind of against human rights, to put people to death because they don't agree with your politics. So, religiously speaking, Venice at the time was considered Catholic, but also Protestant. What they did was, in terms of practice and prayer and general faith, they would have considered themselves Catholic. However, towards the end of the 16th / the early 17th centuries, they denied papacy, which is the power of the Pope. And as the Pope is a fairly important figure in Catholicism, no one was quite certain whether they were still Catholic or not. So you have English political records going, we need to get Venice on our side. They're Protestant, they can be a good ally against Spain and Ireland and literally everywhere. England was fighting everyone. So it's really unlikely that Shakespeare would have wanted to antagonise the Venetians. But at the same time, you have the Catholic countries going, well, they're still Catholic, they can make a good ally, we just need to persuade them that the Pope is good. So Italy in general, very popular because of the culture and the farming, and like literally everything in Italy was something wanted by an empire at one point or another. But Venice in particular, like, everyone wanted it, just to say, oh look, I have Venice. So because it was so popular, Venice had people of all kinds of different cultures living there because of its unique situation. Like, people come there deliberately to trade because it's literally a city on the water. That's the best place you want to take a boat. and people would come there to buy things. People would come there to look at the architecture, because Venetian architecture is pretty cool. They have great art, they have lots of things. So that's one of the things it was known for. Towards the end of Shakespeare's life, there was a treaty signed which handed most control of trade over to a group of Englishmen in London. We can clearly see that he has some monetary interest in here. But obviously there were some negative situations, like there were, I think 1592 and 1600, there were some treatises passed, meaning that it was obviously really hard for Jewish people to get jobs and things. So when Shylock's blaming a lot of his problems on anti-Semitism, he probably has a point. Like, I'm not saying it's a good idea to go around carving hunks of flesh out of people's bodies, but there is a reason that he wants to do such a thing. Now, by anti-Semitism, obviously we mean prejudice against Jewish people. Anyway, so on this cultural thing, I think one of the things people often complain about when it's Shakespeare's cross-dressing plays is, how did they not recognise her when she's dressed as a man? But Shakespearean fashion, it was like the makeup they put on was really, really thick. If they were wearing makeup, the dresses literally changed the shape of your body because you were wearing like a duvet's worth of material just for your dress. So obviously she's a different shape, she's got a different face, and her hair, right? So because Venice is a Catholic practicing country, at the time they believed in covering your hair if you were a woman. So the common practice would have been like a long sheet of material which is embroidered to make it look pretty, because you might be covering your hair so you're not simple, but you want to look fashionable while doing so. And then there's a headband to keep it on, which is part of the outfit, and it would tie underneath your neck with a ribbon. And well, you can see these when you're looking at pictures of Henry VIII's wife, so they're fairly obvious to find out what they look like. That's one of the reasons that some people were against Elizabeth, because she openly walks around with her head uncovered. The horror. It's like basically the modern equivalent of wearing a sports bra as a top. It's shocking and scandalous. So she actually gets this from her mother, Anne Boleyn, who was also known for showing scandalous amounts of her hair, but starting here at the back, like at the back of the head, on the crown. So what would happen is the band would come forward to that, and you could see a lot of her hair while it was tucked in. So technically she was covered, but at the same time it was fairly shocking to all these English people who were horrified at the thought of this woman being their queen. She had to face a lot of drama simply because of the style of clothing she was wearing. But anyway, so as what you can see of Portia's face is probably about from there downwards, and she's wearing really thick makeup most of the time, and like her body's now a different shape. And they wore these shoes in London, definitely, because London was disgusting. Venice was obviously better because their streets were literally made out of water, and it's harder to cover water in manure. You have to work very hard to do that. They'd had these huge platform heels that were closer to stilts, like from here-ish they'd be about that high. So she's changing in height, and many men wouldn't realise that the woman they were in love with or whatever were wearing these shoes, because they had these gigantic skirts on, which were easier to move in than you might think, but that's a different story. So she's suddenly a lot shorter. You can see parts of her that you couldn't see before. You can see her actual face rather than her makeup covered face, and she's literally different shape. So it makes sense that they wouldn't recognise her when she's dressed in her lawyer persona. And also, have you ever seen what a lawyer's supposed to wear? They have this long flowing robe, which I think is known as a hassock, because it's similar to what the clergy would wear, because originally the clergy were involved in the justice courts and things. But so this means that it sticks out a little bit over your shoulders and then just comes straight down, and obviously if you have boobs it's going to stick out, but you can probably assume that Portia did start to hide that. So she's like looking like a completely different person. It makes sense if they didn't recognise her. Okay, so a couple final notes, because this is like a couple of 10 minutes and I need to work on the other videos. So the loan during the whole Will You Step Me business, that comes to, in modern day money, $11,446.10 which is about half the price of a car. Probably a small car, but it's a car. It's a lot of money. And Shylock is legally required to live in a ghetto because obviously anti-Semitism in the government, which really sucks. And they're asking him for this much money. You can see where he's annoyed that it doesn't get paid, yeah? Anyway, I will do an updated version during the Christmas holidays where I've done more research and it's more accurate. But as far as I'm aware, everything here can be sourced and is reliable. Thank you. Good luck with exams.